Hi, it's Danielle here from East End Youth Links, and today we are going to do just a simple pencil sketch. So the only materials we'll need is a piece of paper, pencil, and an eraser. I do have a pencil sharpener with me in case I need to sharpen my pencil, and I also have a piece of paper towel to do a little blending. You can just use your finger if you like, but just a little piece of paper towel or Kleenex works just great. So just for something fun and light, I printed out this cute little picture of baby Yoda, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to draw this little guy. So using very simple shapes, I'm going to walk through this with you step by step. So what we're going to do to start is we're just going to kind of take a little look at him and break him down into shapes, like I said. So if we look at his head, you can see here we have an oval shape. Okay, we look at his ears, we get some little triangles. We look at his neck here, or his coat. We got kind of like a rectangle going on for his collar, and then almost just like a rectangle shaped body. Same thing with his eyes, some ovals. It's got a little nose. You could start it as an oval and then add more shape to it. His mouth too. We have kind of an oval and then kind of half moon for his little smile there. It's more of a little frown. Okay. So let's just start with the basic shapes and then the details come later. So again, like I said, using this photo as my reference, I am going to sketch in his head. So I want to do this lightly. So I'm going to use the side of my pencil. I'm just very lightly going to sketch in an oval shaped head. Now, I don't have it way at the top and I don't have it at the bottom because I want enough room for his body, okay? So think about that when you're sketching in your oval. You don't want to have it way down here or you're not going to have his body. Give enough room that you can get Yoda's body in there. So a nice oval shape for the head. Now, if you look at his head, he's got these really big ears, right? And they're triangle shapes. So the first one, what I want to do is I'm going to come to the side of his head because his ears aren't up here, they're over here. And I'm going to come out and back in, just kind of block off where that triangle ear is. And then if I go across to the other side of his head and follow it, it's on an angle, his head's kind of tilted. So what I'm going to do is from the point of that triangle, come across so I know that that little triangle over here are across from each other. And it's smaller because it's that other side of his head. When you look at this photo, you're seeing more of this side of his head than here because his head's on an angle. If you look at it, it's not straight, it's angled. So I can see that with my picture too. It's not straight, it's angled. Now, if you look at his face, so again, we have the oval head, triangle ears. If we look at his head, if we broke that oval right in half, his head, his nose, and his eyes don't follow that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top. And you see this curve for the side of his head? I want to start in the middle, and I want to use that same curve that I see on the outside of his head in the middle of his head. So I'm going to start from the top of his head, and I'm just going to lightly sketch and make a curve shape from the top of his head down to the middle. Now that's the center of the oval, but it's giving that curve, making this flat oval now into more of a sphere, rounded egg shape, I guess, is more than a sphere would be round, but it's more of an egg shape, more three-dimensional. So again, this curve is repeated. Find the center of the head where the oval is and curve down to the bottom. So you now have two curves repeated, okay? Now, you're going to come over to the other side of the head where his ear is, and we're not going to go straight across. We're going to do the same thing. We're not going to do it as much of a curve, but we're going to come from here. We're going to curve over. Now, I didn't go perfectly straight. I just gave it a little bit of a hump, okay? So this is the center of his head, and this goes across where his eyes are. So if you can see here, his ears, starts from his ear, and it's going to curve up and come back down to get to the center of the other ear. Okay, and this is going to be the line of where his eyes are. So I can see there's enough room in the bottom here that his nose and his mouth would be available. So we're almost split right in half. Okay. Now, let's block off this rectangle shape we have here for a neck. So what I want to do, I'm going to start right from the top of his under his ear here, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to come over the other side. It comes out from his ear again and down. Okay. Now let's curve it. See this curve of his head? Let's repeat that curve with his coat. So it's the same curve. Curve, curve. You see how it's the same feel. Okay. Now let's do his shoulder. So from the side of his coat, we're going to come down, just down to the bottom of the page. We'll do the same over here. I'm not going to worry about his arm right now or the details of the wrinkles of the coat. That'll come later. We're just blocking off the shape. So curve down. Okay. But he does have that arm sticking out. If we look at it, it's just like a little bit of a rectangle sticking out. Triangle top, rectangle bottom. So right from the top, come down, back in. Okay. So we have that shape of that arm and his body. Now you're looking at his neck and you're thinking, Danielle, it is broken into two. It sure is. So if you follow under the curve of his neck, I don't want to put it right in the center. It's not right in the center of where his chin is it? It's over a little bit. So I'm going to come over right where that curve of the center of his head is a little bit more, and I can put a line down and block it off into two shapes. Okay. Now let's go back up to his head. Now we made this nice curve for the shape of where his eyes would be from the center of his ear over. Now, using that line as my guide, I'm going to put his eyes there. Now, his eyes, this is going to be the line where his nose comes down. So I know his nose is here. Would his eye be way over here? No. If you look, it's only up just a little bit. So if we imagine this line coming down and his nose is right here. So let's put his little nose in. I'm just going to put a little oval for now. Just the smallest oval. I know there's little bumps and grooves in his nose, but just for now, I'm just going to put an oval. And I'm going to go from his nose, I'm going to do a little bit of a triangle like this. So you can see a triangle. So his eye would start at that point, right from the edge of his nose up. And there is where I'm going to draw an oval. And you see how I'm drawing the oval for his eye right on that line? Same thing on the other side. Now it's smaller. And the reason it's smaller is because, again, his head is tilted on an angle. So that eye won't be as big as the one on the other side. Okay, so now I have two ovals. Now we'll come down from his nose. You can see he's kind of got this little bit of a frown going on. You can see that it's going to start right from his nose. We can scoop down and make another circle. Right from the corners of that nose down. Right now he looks more like a little bit of a panda bear, but we're just blocking off those shapes. Okay, so now we have this round shape of his mouth. It actually starts from the corner of his nose and comes around. Now his smile in the middle, or his frown, is again that same curve. So starting on one side, over. I'm just going to kind of curve in the shape of that little frown he's got going on. All right. Let's go back up to his eyes. We're going to make them more shaped like his eyes because they're not perfectly like an oval. So if you look, they kind of have more points on the end. So I'm going to use that oval as my guide and go over the top to a point and then back around again. So now it's more shaped like a lemon than an oval. Same with this one. We're going to start with a point around. Now you don't see a point over here because his head stops right there, doesn't it? So his eye actually curves on this side. So he's going to come out, no point, and just curve it around. We're only seeing the point in on the inside. Okay. Now those eyes, he's got a lot of wrinkles. He's really wrinkly, Baby Yoda. From the corner of the eye, you're going to come up, kind of almost like you're giving him an eyebrow, but it's his eyelid here. Just a curve. Same on this side, right from the point up. Following that same shape of the eye, you're going to repeat that curve up top, giving him his eyebrow, okay? Now his eye isn't totally solid black. You can actually see a little bit of white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to curve in here and almost fill that in. Black. Same on this side, okay? Now if you want, you can go in. Now an eyeball has a pupil and then the outside color of his eyes. Yoda's eyes are brown, but inside he has a black pupil first. So inside, I'm going to put a circle and a circle inside each eye. Those are going to be more of a solid black color. And the outside here is going to be more brown. Now we're just drawing with a pencil. So to make it look lighter, what you'll do is you're going to kind of shade in the darker part of his eye. And I'm just using the side of my pencil. I'm shading it in, almost full. I'm not pushing really, really hard. Shading in that black pupil. And then on the outside of the eye, you're going to also color as well. And I'm just not going to push as hard. I'm going all the way around. Notice how I'm coloring from the outside in, outside in. Now this is where this little paper towel is going to come in handy. You see how I don't have everything fully colored and solid? You can take this little piece of paper towel, crunch it up into a ball, and you can just rub those eyes, and it blends the pencil so that you have more of a lighter color. See, now they're looking darker. I'm going to go back in because I want them a little bit darker than that. And it's layers, okay? You want to work in layers, getting those eyes nice and dark, okay? Now, his nose doesn't look right, does it? So let's change that little button nose into more of his tiny little snout he's got. So his nose is actually 3 bumps. We've got a bigger bump in the middle and then small, small. And I'm just using that oval shape as a guide. And I can go in with my eraser and get rid of those lines. So make them disappear. Okay, and I'm actually going to pretty well erase the top of his snout too, because it's really light above. Okay, and his mouth as well. So his mouth, we don't see this definition here and here as much. So I'm going to erase some of these lines that we're using as guidelines. Okay. We still want this little frowny shape. And we know he has a little bit of a curve underneath and just a little tick, tick. So those lines were there as a guide, but I've lightened them up, but you can still see the shape. Okay. Now, let's start giving him some more details. So starting to look more like Baby Yoda. Now, right now we have these triangles and this oval shape. Let's make his head one actual shape. So what I like to do is start out here on his ear, and I'm going to curve his head. Now his head isn't perfectly round, so I'm going to kind of square it off a little bit. Notice how I'm kind of giving it more of the shape of his head. So it's curling up, and then it comes down. And he's got this more of a round cheek here, doesn't he? It's not perfectly round. I'm going to pop out a little bit. Give the illusion of that little cheek. Okay. Now I'm going to come back in. Now you can see down here is really dark from the shadow. And I know that his coat it comes right up to his mouth. So I know his head actually stops here. Okay. Same thing with the other side of his head. We can see those rounder cheeks. So right from the corner of his ear, I know I can come down and round it out a little bit. Okay. Same thing with his ears. You're going to come out. You have the guide, the shape for a reference. Now, it's not perfectly straight triangle. We see a bump. We have the triangle as a guide, knowing it is kind of shaped like a triangle, but we know we can use it as a guide and go off of it to just add the shape of his ear back in. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm going in and making more refined lines. When we drew these lines in at first, they were just a light lay-in sketch. Now we're putting more of the final lines in. Now the inside of his ear, start out here at the point, I'm going to come out, curve in. Okay. So follow the inside of his ear and kind of a little hook on the end. And then I'm going to put backwards C in his ear. All right. So what you did is you started at the tip of the ear and you're following that same shape along the top of his ear out till you get to the side of his head. And then it curves in down with a little bump to make that little hook on the bottom of his ear. And then I just sketched in a little bit of a backwards C. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the other side of his head. Now you can see the top of his fuzzy ear on this side. So it starts up here on the corner of his head, comes out. So I'm darkening those lines up now, putting more refined lines in. And then back. Now, again, it's repeated just like at the top of the ear here. Start a little bit thicker out to the point of his ear. Now I don't see as much. I don't see in the inside of his ear on this side because again, his head is on that angle. Okay. Now let's come down and fix his coat a little bit because it's not this perfectly wrapped around his neck. I want to make it look more 3D again. So if you look on the side under his ear, it comes out, it bumps in, and then bumps back out. So let's make it more puffy. Right under his ear here, I'm going to come out, in, out. Making it thicker, aren't I? Okay, and then it's going to come down and curve. Right here, I know, right to where his head is. In, and it comes right up past his mouth, going over those lines. So I made that a little bit thicker around his neck, didn't I? Okay, now I'll go the other side, same thing. We're going to start out here on his ear. I'm going to come out, kind of round it out a little bit more, curve back in. Right? So if you want to go in, you can go in and remove the old lines that were your lay-in sketch. Again, those are your guideline. Okay. Now, let's start putting a little bit more detail into Baby Yoda. Now, his eyes, I'm not happy with them yet. I just have the base part in. So what I want to do is I really want to go in and concentrate on the darker spots. So again, I want it nice and dark where his pupil is, that circle we made. So I'm actually doing another layer of pencil and I'm darkening that where his brown of his eye would be. Okay. Redefining, going around that eye. I have my photo as my reference to make his eyes. And again, this side of the head, we're not seeing the point, so it's curved on that side of the eye. Just trying to make his pupils a little bit darker than the rest of his eye. Okay, let's start putting more of them wrinkles in. So underneath his eye, at the top of his eye, we have a hoop. Underneath, we have a little one as well for a wrinkle. 1, 2 for a little wrinkle. Okay, we also have some wrinkles up on his head. So same curve, come up here a little higher. 1, 2. When you go up the center of his head, he has a little wrinkle in the middle. Okay, starting to come alive. All right. Now, let's get in and start putting in some dark spots. Now, when I say dark spots, you're going to use your pencil to put in the shadows. So again, you can see here, it's really dark under his chin, and I want to make that shadow. So I'm going to use the side of my pencil, and I'm going to lightly almost color with my pencil to color in to see where it's darker. I'm not pushing really hard. I'm using the side of my pencil. I'm going to curve up the bottom of his mouth. See how I'm putting that shadow under his chin. And I'm kind of curving around the circles of his cheeks. This is where your paper towel comes in handy. Take your paper towel and rub it. Now you're going to blend it like you're patting his little cheeks. And rubbing that in. And those pencil lines become a shadow of his little cheek underneath, okay? I'm going to get rid of this line. I forgot to get rid of it. All right, where else do we see shadows? We see shadows on the top of his head a little bit too. So I'm just using the side of my pencil, putting a little dark in here. It's going to come around down by his ear a little bit too, isn't it? So it's giving that shape. So you can see it's darker on the outside. And as it comes to the center, it's lighter and it gives that curved shape to his head. Okay, so a little bit darker at top here. And it's darker a little bit where we see any of these wrinkles we put too. So what I do is I'm going to blend with the top of his head. I use that blender too to rub those wrinkles a little bit. I'm blending it. And again, you notice when I'm blending, I'm following the shape of his head. All right. Now let's get in his little ears a little bit. Let's see his nose. I'm going to go a little bit darker underneath, a little bit of shadow, and then I'll blend. Again, it's really a lot easier if you have a tool called a blending stump, or you can roll a paper up really tight to make a point, because a blending stump, you just use the tip. The paper towel works exactly the same. You can manipulate it to be pointy, okay? Now, let's get in and put some shadow in his ear. If you look at his ear, it's really dark inside here. So I'm just going to shadow with using the side of my pencil, a little bit of that shadow in. And then I'm going to use my paper towel here and I'm just going to blend it out. Giving a little bit more depth to my drawing, isn't it? It went from just a flat line pencil drawing to having a little more detail. So same thing, shadow. It's closer to his head a little bit. And these are adding value or tone to your sketch, because when you just use one pressure, you're only going to get one value of your pencil, what your pencil can actually do. By blending and looking at your photo and breaking it down to lightest, darkest, then you can get more depth. Like I know I can go back in here, the bottom of his chin, I'm going to use this pencil again. I'm going to do another layer. So I want it darker under his chin than it already is. I'm just using the side of my pencil, darkening it up, and it shouldn't look finished yet because we're still working on it. It's layers and it's a process, okay? And then I'm going to use my blender, rub it in, and it gets softer. Okay? Now you can also look at this picture of Baby Yoda. You'll notice he is very fuzzy. Let's make him fuzzy. Let's make him furry. Use your side of your pencil. Flick up from them ears. Give him, I need a little bit more shadow on his nose here, don't I? It's so cute. I'm using my pencil just to kind of add some fuzz on his ears. I want to make him look more furry because he is. He's got a little fuzzy head. Okay. Curve under his chin a little bit. See, I've gone back in again and put darker again back in. Now, getting those eyes nice and dark. Those wrinkles in. Where you go in, look at your picture, see the darkest points. Just use your pencil to make them a little bit darker. Now, it's the same thing. Use your pencil to make the darker spots and you get this nice shadow going. You can also use your eraser. I use my eraser as much as I use my pencil when I draw. So I can go in, I can see it's really white on his cheek here. I'm just going to use that white to highlight that white spot. You see that? It's nice and white. You can see that above his eye a little bit too, a little bit whiter. And his cheek. Buffing it back out whiter. See that? That's just using my eraser. Same thing with his ear here. Again, remember I said when you want it darker, just go back in and put another layer of pencil. I want it darker on the inside of his ear here. And I can blend it. But then I really want to show this lighter spot in his ear. So I'm going to use my eraser. Watch. Go in. Pull back the gray. Gives that highlight on his ear. Okay. And coming more and more to life as we go. Okay. Now let's go back down to his coat. We'll start putting some depth. Now I'm looking at my coat and I'm thinking, Danielle, his neck is really thick. It's a little bit thicker than I want it. So I adjust. I'm going to make it a little bit shorter. Following that same shape and just chop it off. I know that with my eraser to adjust it. Okay. Right up to there and down. Okay. And same shape with arm here. And let's start putting the shadows in this coat. So I can see a really dark shadow here. Color with the side of my pencil a little bit where I see it really dark on his fuzzy coat. I see it really dark down the front. There's opening of his coat. See a really dark wrinkle, almost like a rectangle. Just using the side of my pencil, sketching it in. Not being precise with it. I'm putting in these dark spots. And over here too, we've seen a swirl wrinkle. We're seeing the cuff of his arm is rounded at the bottom. So let's just adjust. Round it. Round it again, look. round, round. That is the cuff of his coat. Okay, same up here. Just going in, I'm looking at where it's dark. I'm using the side of my pencil to go in and make it darker. Now, I do want it to look a little dusty, so you can even use your pencil and lightly, see how I'm lightly shading his coat? Okay. And I'm going to take my paper towel, watch this. I'm going to rub it. You can tell I'm rubbing a little bit harder to get that blend, and I'm just using a plain everyday pencil. You can get more value by using different types of pencils. But what we have at home right now is mainly just a regular pencil, which is an HB. And you can do a lot just with it, okay? If you have drawing pencils and you have softer ones, the darker spots, you want to use a softer pencil, which is like, you'd use like a 4B or a 6B pencil. And then where you want it lighter, you'd use something like an HB or a 2B, okay? And that's just to give even more depth to your photo. So you don't need an actual set of drawing pencils to draw, obviously. You can use just a plain basic pencil because you can get lots of tone and value in your sketch by just using a regular pencil. So again, just like his chin, I'm going back in and putting another layer of pencil because I want to add another layer of depth in the sketch, okay? So I know his little arm is right here. So I know right at the bottom here is his cuff of the sleeve. So I'm going to add it in. Curve at the top, curve at the bottom. You can't see his little hands because he's so little. Just darken up that shape. Again, go back in with your blender. Blending that pencil. Nice little shadow on his coat now. I want to blend in his little cuff of his coat too. So I'm just going to use a pencil and my paper towel, and I'm going to rub the pencil into the paper. And once I get it all rubbed in, it looks good. I want to look at it and see where it's whiter. So I can see a nice bright white spot on his arm. Use my eraser, pull it back, giving a nice highlight on his coat. You can see a little white on the bottom of his cuff. You can see a little white on the little bit of a fold. Okay. You can see some white on his little collar at the top, down here on the bottom a little bit. Okay, on this side of his collar. So you guys can see more depth as I pulled some of that darker spots back. I get some highlights in the color of his coat. Look at your photo as a reference always. Okay, I will leave this photo in the comments for reference if you want to use it as you draw. But this is pretty much Baby Yoda, just a quick little sketch. We broke it down into basic shapes, and then we went in and put our detail in just with a regular HB pencil and just kind of layered your graphite and used the blending technique of using paper towel. Like I said, I didn't always have one of these crazy tools called a blending stump, which is great because you can get right in there and rub really hard and move your pencil that you have on here, but we don't always have those tools. So all you need is a little piece of paper towel, or even your finger. Your finger will do the same thing, but it's less messy to have a piece of paper towel. So I hope you enjoyed this quick sketch of Baby Yoda, and I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of detail in myself, maybe make them a little bit fuzzier. Okay, you can add as much detail as you like, make it your own. Now, even after you get it done in a pencil sketch, if you want to go ahead and get in there with some color, by adding a little color, you're adding more depth to your photo. You don't have to, you can just do it as a plain basic pencil sketch. But adding some color can be fun. You can also add other elements to it. Maybe you want to add a background or some other characters with Baby Yoda. But I hope you had fun doing this sketch with me today,
and I would love to see your creations. So if you want to share them with me, you can send them to me via email, easthants.uselinks@gmail.com. And I hope you have a great day. Happy sketching.